And of course, the sound of news. The sound of news means the news must be breaking. We tend to break a little bit of wind over here, but this lady is no wind and all facts and all information. Of course, who are we talking about, Dave?
We are talking about none other than Jami Jones, the managing editor at Landline. OOIDA.
Good morning, and Jami, we're on kind of a hookup here. We're kind of curious. Is there any Christmas commercial from your childhood that has stuck with you to the point of becoming an earworm?
I'm still a sucker for the Clydesdales commercials.
Here comes the king. Here comes the big number one. Budweiser beer.
And where they have the Clydesdales playing snow, football in the snow, and I don't know. They're just funny and clever to me. I like them.
Well, good morning to you. How are you doing? How is the football world treating you?
Well, we were on a bye week, so it was boring, but glad we get one.
But you get to watch everybody else you don't like lose, which I'm sure has filled your heart. I'm sure the Bills' experience in Miami must have filled your heart with some level of joy, right?
I've learned to quit trashing on other teams because it never goes well for me later on.
Let me start off with a question here, and then Dave's got one for you too. So we got ICE raids and the FMCSA issuing threats to the states. How do you keep up with all this stuff, Jami? How do you prioritize at this point with the fire hose that's coming your way?
Especially when you have so many bills coming at you on top of everything else. Seems like lots of lawmakers are ready to jump on board with this. And, you really start having to look at it from an analytical point of view. What actually has legs that could potentially make a change? And what is, for all intents and purposes, a conversation piece? And, you have to kind of weigh those things before you commit a lot of man hours into different projects.
I'm going to ask Dave a question here by way of setting up one for you. So, Dave, when you worked over at the when you were actually serving over in Korea, you had to read that the ticker. You had to often pull your news from the ticker. How would you determine this is readable and that's not readable? I mean, whereas like this is nonsense, this is noise, and this is the signal.
Well, usually the sourcing was. We didn't take stuff directly off the wire, but that's where it starts. And more in tune with that would be earlier days of WWL, where we actually did go into the little closet where the teletype machines were and just rip off news and read it right off the Associated Press, UPI, because you trust those sources. That's the thing too, having trustable sources. Like Landline is.
Yeah, and that's my question, Jami, because you guys are a trusted source because you use trusted sources, and so much it seems to me is you kind of distinguishing between the I guess what we would call the conservative version of virtue signaling and actual actionable policy choices, right?
Yeah, and our true north is always how could this affect the actual driver in the seat of the truck? So everything goes back to that molecular level. And if it doesn't, we're probably not going to waste a whole lot of time on it other than, hey, just making you aware. But when it's a fundamental shift to what's going to happen to them in the seat of their trucks, that's absolutely priority news.
Yeah, and it always has been. The thing about the whole thing about, the driver this, the driver that, it's all about the driver. The driver is our best customer, You hear all of these slogans, and it's a real slogan-oriented industry, always has been. I don't know if it means that much anymore. I mean, when you peel back all of the layers, you kind of are in the same place you always were when you really think about it, I think. That sounds a little negative, I know, but...
Dave's been on this kick recently, Jami, where he says basically he's like, nothing's changed, it's all the same, and it feels like a giant loop. So I'm going to ask you to either contradict Dave or go with him here. Do you agree with Dave? Is it the same story over and over again, or is there new stuff in the space now?
I think there's some new stuff that's been added.
Okay.
And there it is.
It is kind of... Well, and it really is all the old stuff. I mean, Terry Button, one of the OIDA board of directors, came in and was looking through magazines from the 80s looking for bugs on trucks. And now we have trackers on trucks, that CVSA's pushing. So it's kind of like, here we go.
Same thing, only different, right?
Yeah, it's the same, just different, more high tech. So,
Look,
Well, my counter to both of you guys, is the fact that while it may seem circular, if somebody on either side stops, things would change really quickly. If, in fact, we lived in something other than a democracy, if we lived in an authoritarian regime where people could just say, this is what it is, and therein no more, and there are no lawsuits to pursue, and there is no way to stop what we're going to do, and we got more men and more guns, therein an end, it would be a very different story. And so the story is always who's got the upper hand, it seems to me, and are there new strategies for how to gain advantage, and can the other side adjust to the situation as it goes? And I've always said that sometimes stasis is a good thing because I hate when people say a slippery slope. It makes me crazy. That's a slippery slope. I'm like, you want the earth to be flat? Because if it's flat, it means somebody has won and they're in an end. And there are people who want that. But am I making sense to you guys? It's like, yes, it seems like a long circular struggle, but the alternative is far, far worse unless you get everything you want. That make sense?
yeah, it'd have to be a utopia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And which, by the way, somebody's utopia is somebody else's dystopia. We got really deep here all of a sudden.
Yeah, because because we're talking on two different planes of reality and existence. I mean, we are humans. We live the human condition. We've been doing this for as long as humans have been alive. If you take a look at ancient history, they were talking about the same things we're talking about now. So you take a truck driver, and you have all of these rules and regulations and these boxes that you put people in, and at the same time you say, yes, but there are no stereotypical truck drivers. Everybody's different. Everybody's an individual. But at the same time, you have to lump them into these categories and put them in places like there was no individuality. So there's two levels of existence that don't coincide a lot. I know that goes way into the weeds.
Way into the weeds. Okay, I'm going to tell you some of the headlines over at landline.media to give you a sense. Another ICE raid in Oklahoma arrests dozens of illegal truckers. FMCSA to states over non-domiciled CDLs, shape up or pay up. Clearing the air at the broker carrier summit, and Senate bill takes aim at diesel emissions. And the first of those that I mentioned actually is the lead story of another ICE raid in Oklahoma arrests dozens of illegal truckers. And by the way, the picture you guys use at landline.media, these folks, these California driver's licenses, let me tell you something right now. These guys look like somebody drew them. At least one of these guys has drawn on eyebrows. This is crazy stuff.
That is straight off of the ICE press release, too. Those are the documents that were provided.
I mean, it's scary to the point of it, literally I mean, these two guys, if I had told you they were with the Mexican cartel and it's got nothing to do with their race, guys, whatsoever, it's the way they look. I mean, they are literally the definition of tough hombres, people you don't want to run into in an alley at 3:00 in the morning, is kind of, and by the way, that's the story they're putting out, right? You guys have to take some of that with a grain of salt. Not that it's not true, but man, ICE wants you to see these guys. They want you to see these guys are the guys they want you to see, right? So that's kind of the game too. It's kind of filtering through what is the message and what is the noise, what is the virtue signaling, as it were, right?
Mm-hmm. And the raids, I have covered plenty of ICE raids over the course of my career. For the same exact issue, quite honestly, just not in trucking. It was illegal workers being employed and covering those raids. And I know how many legal U.S. citizens, we lived right on the edge of the Cherokee Nation, and there were several full-blood Cherokees that were snapped up in those. So it is. You have to watch them carefully. You have to see what's going on, make sure it's legitimate, make sure it's everything that it's being sold to you as, and then you just decide to cover the news.
All right, this is the end of this interview because we are out of time. That's how this sumbitch works around here. By the way, but I do want to say thank you. I am going to be calling you today later on in the afternoon. So if you're watching a Budweiser commercial, let me know. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Okie doke, I will do that. I just love the horses.
Hey, by the way, we are literally 6 blocks away from the New Orleans racetrack. I'm right there with you. Jami Jones is the managing editor at Landline.media. Head over there and get all the info you need. Thank you, Jami J.
No, you're welcome as always, guys.